The phone rang at 3:11 a.m. Mara jolted upright in bed, her chest seizing with the sharp spike of panic that always came when the world dared to intrude at such an hour. For a moment, she sat frozen in the dark, listening to the hollow echo of the ringtone reverberating through her apartment. She lived alone, always had since the divorce, and that made every late-night disturbance feel like a personal violation. Her throat was dry, but she forced her voice to work as she reached for the phone. "Hello?" A crackle, a pause, then, "He's gone." The voice was brittle, weeping, her younger brother Daniel. Mara swung her legs out of bed, every muscle taut, every nerve braced. "What do you mean he's gone? Who?" Another pause. When Daniel spoke again, his words carried the slow, deliberate weight of something unspeakable. "Dad, he's dead." By dawn, Mara was driving through the thinning mist of the rural highway, her car cutting through the pale light that felt neither morning nor night, just a gray half-world. She hadn't spoken to her father in 6 years, hadn't seen his house, the house they'd grown up in, since the last fight, since the words they had both said that she could never unsay. Yet now she was being pulled back, reeled into that place like a hooked fish dragged through dark water. The house sat where it always had, 3 miles beyond the last gas station, swallowed by pines and the creeping choke of vines. The siding sagged, the roof lines drooped. She remembered it differently, her childhood lens smoothing out the decay, but now it loomed like something diseased, waiting to be lanced. Daniel was there already, sitting on the porch steps. His head was bowed, his hands dangling between his knees. Mara felt a twist in her stomach when she saw him, his face thinner than she remembered, his eyes ringed with sleepless purple crescents. "I didn't know who else to call," he said as she approached. His voice carried that same brittleness as the phone call, like something frayed and ready to snap. "You did the right thing," Mara murmured. She hugged him, feeling how sharply his bones pressed against his skin. Inside, the air carried a damp, mineral tang, like water left too long in metal pipes. The house had always smelled faintly of tobacco and fried food when they were children. Now it smelled stagnant. "He died in the study," Daniel said, slumped over his desk. "Heart attack, the coroner thinks." Mara forced herself to look. The room was dim, the blinds drawn tight. Their father's chair sat pushed back from the desk, a water-stained ring marring the blotter. And there, darkening the wood, was a wide pool of something that at first glance seemed like ink. Only when Mara leaned closer did the iron salt scent confirm it. Blood. Her chest tightened. "Jesus, Daniel, how long was he here before you found him?" Daniel's jaw worked, but no words came. Finally, 3 days. A silence swelled between them, thick and sticky. The funeral arrangements came next, mechanical and unfeeling. But what unsettled Mara most wasn't her father's death. It was the letter. Daniel found it while sorting through the desk drawers. A single envelope, yellowed at the edges, with her name written across it in her father's distinct, angular scrawl. Her fingers trembled as she tore it open. Inside, one page. "Mara, if you are reading this, then I am gone. You must come back to the house, both of you. There are things you do not understand about me, about this place, about what I have kept from you. I was only ever trying to protect you. But the protection is gone now. You must take care. Do not go into the cellar at night." That was all. No love, no warmth, just that chilling admonition. She read it 3 times, her pulse thudding heavier, with each repetition. "Do not go into the cellar at night." The words stuck in her mind like burrs. That evening, after the coroner had taken the body and the paperwork was filed, Mara and Daniel stayed in the house. Neither wanted to admit it, but the unspoken truth hung heavy between them. They weren't ready to leave. There was something, some unfinished cord, that bound them to this place. They ate little. They spoke even less. When the sun dropped, a hush spread through the house. Mara tried to sleep in her old room, but lying in that narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, she felt an unnatural weight pressing down on the air. The silence was too deep, too absolute. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of listening. At 2:47 a.m., she woke to a sound, not loud, not distinct, just a faint shuffle, like bare feet dragging across floorboards. Her breath locked in her chest. She turned her head, listening harder. The sound came from beneath, the floor, the cellar. She sat up, heart racing. Daniel's warning voice echoed from earlier. The cellar's always been weird, too cold even in summer. I never went down there. After dark, she slipped from bed, padded into the hall. Daniel's door was shut. A thin line of light glowed beneath it. He wasn't sleeping either. The shuffling came again, this time accompanied by a faint, wet scrape, like something heavy dragging across stone. Her skin prickled. Against her better judgment, she moved toward the cellar door at the end of the hallway. The air grew colder as she approached, carrying a faint odor she couldn't quite name, earthy, metallic, tinged with rot. Her hand hovered over the knob. It was ice cold, colder than the wood around it. She pressed her ear against the door. Silence. Then, faint, almost like a whisper pressed against the other side. Her name. Mara. She stumbled back, her heart hammering against her ribs so violently she thought it might burst. The voice was her father's. Morning brought no peace. Mara sat at the kitchen table, clutching a mug of black coffee, her hands trembling too badly to drink. Daniel entered, bleary-eyed, his skin clammy. "You didn't sleep either," she said softly. He shook his head. "I heard it too." Her eyes snapped to his. "You heard what?" He swallowed hard. His lips were pale. Dad's voice. The silence between them was more damning than any words. They spent the rest of the day combing through the house. Old records, boxes of papers, photographs, anything that might explain the letter, the cellar, the voice. What they found instead was a pattern, dozens of notebooks filled with their father's precise handwriting. Page after page of strange diagrams, geometric patterns, spirals, grids. Not quite math, not quite art, something in between. And beside the drawings, notes. The angles must be precise. If the seal weakens, it will find its way through. The cellar. Door is a threshold. Never open it after dusk. It speaks sometimes in familiar voices. Do not listen. Daniel closed the last notebook with a snap, his face pale. He was losing his mind. Mara wasn't so sure. That night they tried again to sleep. At 1:14 a.m., the first sound came. Not shuffling this time, but tapping. Slow, deliberate, like fingernails against wood. Mara lay rigid in bed, every muscle screaming at her to move. But she couldn't. The tapping grew louder, faster, and then the voice again. Stronger this time. "Mara. Daniel. Let me out." Her father's voice, followed by another voice. Higher, thinner. Her mother's voice. Dead for 20 years. "Children. We miss you. Come down." Mara's blood turned to ice. She stumbled from bed, rushing to Daniel's room. He was already at the door, eyes wide, skin ghost pale. "You hear it too?" he whispered. "Yes." They both turned toward the end of the hall. The cellar door was rattling on its hinges. The cellar door stopped rattling only when the first light of dawn filtered through the cracked blinds. Mara and Daniel sat in the kitchen, eyes red, mugs of untouched coffee cooling between their hands. Neither spoke for a long time. Every word they could say felt too fragile, too ordinary against the weight of what they had heard. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. "It's not them." Mara lifted her gaze. His voice was hoarse, raw, but steady. "It's not Mom. It's not Dad. Whatever's down there," he swallowed, knuckles whitening around the ceramic mug. "It knows their voices. It's using them." Mara wanted to argue, to cling to the thin thread of denial, but she couldn't. Deep in her chest, beneath the pounding heartbeat and tight breath, something colder whispered agreement. They decided to leave that morning. Pack up the important documents, the photo albums, the notebooks, and go. They would let the lawyers and real estate agents handle the rest. But when Mara went to start the car, the engine didn't turn over. Not even a click. She popped the hood, but the machinery inside looked wrong. Rust had spread across the metal like a disease, furred and swollen. The smell of rot seeped from the engine block, so strong it clawed at her throat. It was fine. Yesterday, Daniel said, his voice taut. Mara slammed the hood shut, trembling. We're not supposed to leave. The words slipped out before she could stop them. She didn't know if she meant it as fear or certainty. The house grew stranger as the day dragged on. The wallpaper in the hall blistered and peeled in long, curling strips, exposing walls beneath that pulsed faintly, as if breathing. The air grew thick with a damp musk, mold and iron and earth. Flies gathered in lazy spirals near the ceiling, their drone constant, suffocating. In the living room, a photograph shifted. Mara swore it. She had been staring at it absent-mindedly, an old family portrait from when she was 12, Daniel 8. But the second she blinked, her father's painted smile had flattened into something grim, his eyes too sharp, too knowing. She tore the frame off the wall and stuffed it face down in a drawer. That night, the voices returned. Mara. Daniel. Children. But this time the words came not only from the cellar door, but from the vents, the walls, the very floorboards beneath their feet. Whispers threading through the house like roots pushing through soil. Daniel pressed his hands against his ears, his face contorted. It doesn't stop. It's inside. Mara grabbed his shoulders, forcing him to meet her eyes. Don't listen. That's what it wants. Just don't listen. But even as she said it, she felt the syllables worming into her brain, burrowing deep, echoing with unbearable intimacy. Her father's voice, her mother's, calling her down. By the third day, sleep was impossible. Daniel grew restless, pacing the halls, muttering under his breath. He had taken one of the notebooks and carried it everywhere, thumbing through its pages compulsively. These drawings, he said once, holding it out toward her. They're not random. Look, the geometry, the lines. It's like a seal, like Dad was holding something in. Mara looked at the notebook. Spirals nested within spirals, angles so sharp her eyes ached trying to follow them. She flipped the page, and her breath caught. There, scrawled in the corner, was a phrase. The hollowing. She felt the words like a chill beneath her skin. What does it mean? Daniel shook his head. I don't know. But I think it's what's down there. That night Daniel vanished. Mara woke to silence. Not the oppressive, listening silence of before, but the brittle hush of absence. She staggered from bed, heart pounding, calling his name. No answer. His room was empty. The notebook lay open on the bed, pages filled with scribbled handwriting she didn't recognize. Letters warped, jagged, desperate. She found him at the cellar door. He stood with one hand pressed flat against it, his face slack, his lips moving soundlessly. Daniel! She hissed, grabbing his arm. His eyes snapped toward her, and for a terrifying instant, they weren't his. They were black, pupil swallowing iris, reflecting nothing. Then he blinked, staggered, and they were his again. Mara. His voice cracked. It was Mom. I heard her. She was crying, begging me to let her out. I almost... His whole body shook. Mara pulled him away, slammed the latch on the cellar, and dragged him to the kitchen. It's not her. You know it's not her. Daniel pressed his hands to his face, sobbing. But it feels like her. I can't tell the difference. The next day, the house turned hostile. Every surface seemed alive. Wood grain twisting into leering shapes, plaster bulging like swollen flesh. The smell worsened. Sweet, rot, copper, mildew. Mara gagged when she opened the fridge. Every bit of food, from the sealed milk carton to the jar of pickles, had spoiled into black sludge. They drank tap water, but even that tasted faintly metallic, tinged with earth. The whispers followed them everywhere. sometimes coherent, sometimes just sibilant hissing, sometimes in their parents' voices, sometimes in their own. That evening, Mara sat curled in the living room chair, knees to her chest, staring at the curtained window. Beyond it, the forest pressed close, trees black against the twilight. Tap came against the glass. Gentle, deliberate. She froze. Another tap. Then another. Slowly, her gaze lifted. A face peered in from the darkness. Her breath caught. It was her father. Pale, gaunt, his eyes glassy, his lips pulled into a pleading grimace. "Mara," he mouthed through the glass. His hand pressed flat against it, skin gray and waxy. "Let me in." Her scream tore through the house. Daniel rushed in, but by the time he looked, the window was empty. That night, the cellar door opened. Neither Mara nor Daniel touched it, but sometime past midnight, the latch clicked, the hinges groaned, and the door eased wide into a yawning black mouth. The smell that wafted out was unbearable, rot and damp earth, but layered with something sharper, sweeter, almost chemical. They stood frozen at the end of the hall, watching. A sound rose from below, not whispering, not tapping, breathing, slow, wet, cavernous. Daniel grabbed Mara's hand. His skin was cold, clammy. "We have to go." But when they turned to leave, the front door wouldn't open. The knob spun uselessly in her grip, the wood around it soft, pulsing. Every window they tried was the same. Sealed, frames warped, glass unmoving as if fused to the walls. The house had swallowed them. The next day, Daniel was different. He barely spoke. He wandered the halls like a man in a dream, staring at walls, at ceilings, at corners of shadow. His skin was pale, clammy, his eyes unfocused. At dinner, if it could be called that, stale crackers and tepid water, he finally whispered, "Maybe it's not trying to hurt us. Maybe it just wants us back. A family again." Mara slammed her fist against the table, the sound sharp in the suffocating silence. "That thing is not our family. Stop saying that. Stop." But Daniel only looked at her with hollow eyes and murmured, "You don't know. You don't know what I hear when it talks to me." She couldn't answer. That night, Mara woke to find his bed empty again. Her pulse thundered as she crept down the hall. The cellar door stood wide open. A faint flickering glow spilled upward, the color of molten amber. "Daniel." Her voice quavered. From below came his reply, faint, wavering. "Mara, come down, please. It's safe. They're waiting for us." Her throat closed. She edged closer, staring down into the black stairwell. The glow pulsed faintly, as though breathing. Cold wind wafted up, carrying whispers too faint to parse. But she thought she heard her name. Thought she heard her mother's laughter, soft and coaxing. Her foot hovered over the first step. Something deep inside her screamed, "No." She jerked back, slammed the door, and shoved the latch down. Then she braced her back against it, trembling, violently. From the other side, Daniel's voice rose, no longer pleading, now angry, desperate. "Mara, open it, open it." The pounding began. Fists, frantic, slamming against the wood. She pressed harder against the door, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Daniel, stop, please." But the pounding only grew louder, stronger, until suddenly it stopped. Silence, and then, in the quiet, a whisper so soft she almost thought she imagined it. "He's ours now." Mara didn't move from the cellar door until the sky outside had begun to pale. She sat there, back pressed against the wood, her body stiff and trembling, as if any shift in weight might let whatever lay beneath claw its way through. When dawn finally broke, she dared to unlatch it. She expected resistance, a violent shove from the other side, but the door swung open easily. The stairwell was empty. "Daniel," she whispered. Her voice echoed into the void, thin and swallowed. "No." Answer. The air wafting up was colder than it had ever been, carrying that sweet, rotting tang. She closed the door again, hands shaking so violently she could barely fit the latch back into place. Her brother was gone. The day dragged like a nightmare that refused to end. Mara searched every inch of the house, the bedrooms, the attic, even outside in the overgrown yard where the weeds grew chest-high. No Daniel. No trace. Her father's notebooks littered the table. She opened them, flipping desperately through the pages. The spirals, the geometry, the cryptic notes. It feeds on grief. It wears the voices of the lost. To listen too long is to hollow out the self. The cellar is not a room, it is a mouth. Her breath quickened, panic clawing at her ribs. Daniel hadn't just been taken. He had been consumed. Night fell like a closing fist. Mara sat at the kitchen table, the house groaning around her, the shadows stretching unnaturally long. Every tick of the old wall clock sounded like a hammer. Then the voices returned. This time, they weren't whispers. They were clear, strong. Surrounding her from every wall, every vent, every seam of the house. Mara, it's so lonely. Come down, join us. Her father, her mother, Daniel, all at once. She clamped her hands over her ears, but the voices burrowed deeper, vibrating inside her skull. Her vision swam, black dots flickering across the edges. No, she rasped. You're not them. You're not. Her father's voice cut her off. You will be, soon. The cellar door unlatched itself with a clean click. Mara's head whipped toward it. The hallway seemed longer now, stretching, walls pulsing faintly as though the house itself were breathing. From the dark, mouth of the cellar spilled a light, molten, amber, unsteady, as though shining from beneath water. And with the light came warmth. Not the cloying cold she had felt before, but a beckoning soft heat that stroked her skin like a familiar hand. Her mother's laugh drifted upward, light, lilting. The laugh she remembered from childhood bedtime stories. Her knees buckled. A sob escaped her throat. Mara. Daniel's voice now, pleading. Please. I'm here. I can't get out unless you come down. Her body moved before her mind could resist. Step by step, she crept toward the door, every instinct shrieking in protest, every rational thought clawing at her to stop. But grief was heavier than fear. She reached the threshold. The stairs yawned downward into the glow. She took one step, then another, the wood groaning beneath her weight. The smell was overpowering now, rot, copper, earth, but threaded with something sweeter, intoxicating, like perfume. Halfway down, she saw them. Her father at the bottom, face pale but smiling. Her mother beside him, her arms open. Daniel too, his eyes wet, his expression pleading. See, Daniel whispered, we're all together again. Just come the rest of the way. Her heart cracked. Every part of her wanted to believe, to rush into their arms, to finally erase the years of bitterness, the distance, the loss. But then her gaze snagged on her mother's smile, too wide, too sharp, teeth just a little too long. She blinked, and in that blink, the illusion fractured. Their faces shifted, melted. Her father's skin sagged like wax. Her mother's eyes sank deep into her skull, black and bottomless. Daniel's mouth stretched, unhinged, a wet cavern spilling whispers. They weren't her family. They never had been. Mara screamed and stumbled backward, clinging to the railing. The things below surged upward. The glow erupted into a storm of writhing shapes, limbs and faces twisting together, splitting, reforming. A mass of flesh and shadow, mouths upon mouths, whispering in voices she loved and voices she had never known. The cellar was alive, a churning, endless maw of memory and hunger. Hands, dozens, hundreds, slid up the banister, reaching for her ankles, her wrists, her throat. She fled, scrambling up the stairs, slamming the door behind her. She threw the latch down just as something struck the other side with bone-rattling force. The wood bowed, splintered. She shoved a chair beneath the handle, chest heaving, tears streaming. From behind the door came a cacophony of voices, all shrieking her name. The night stretched into eternity. The pounding stopped eventually. The whispers too, but Mara knew it wasn't gone. She sat huddled in the corner of the living room, every lamp blazing, clutching one of the notebooks to her chest like a talisman. Her father hadn't been mad. He had known. He had fought to keep it contained. But now the seal was weakening, and she was alone. By the time morning came, Mara knew what she had to do. The notebook spoke of sealing rituals, of geometry precise, enough to hold back the thing beneath. But it required sacrifice, always sacrifice. Her father had given his life to it. Maybe her mother too. Now Daniel. It was her turn. Hands trembling, she drew the symbols on the floor of the study. Spirals, angles, circles intersecting just so. Her father's diagrams were burned into her brain now, as if the house itself whispered them to her. When the last line was drawn, the air grew heavy, the walls creaked. From below came a low, rumbling growl that vibrated the foundation. The cellar door shuddered. Mara stepped into the center of the seal. She closed her eyes. You can't have me. You can't have anyone else. The floor buckled beneath her feet. A roar split the air, not sound, but pressure, crushing, deafening. The cellar door blew open. The thing surged upward, a tide of shadow and flesh, mouths gaping, eyes rolling. The voices screamed her name, begged her, cursed her. She raised her arms, bracing against the seal. The lines on the floor flared with blinding light. The thing shrieked, recoiling, but the pull was too strong. Mara felt herself tearing, her body stretching thin, her breath ripped from her lungs. The light consumed her, searing every nerve. She screamed, once, twice, and then her voice was gone, swallowed by the roar. The light flared one final time, and then silence. When the neighbors came weeks later, drawn by the absence, by the smell, they found the house empty. The cellar was sealed tight, door fused to the frame, impossible to open. On the study floor, burned into the wood, was a single spiral. At its center lay Mara's necklace, and if one listened long enough, pressing an ear against the grain, they swore they could hear a voice, a woman's voice, whispering, "Come down,